The caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series is sponsored by DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage, and by FPZERO Simulators, providing professional grade simulators for your home and our drivers, and by Just Add Lightness, high performance LED lights for the Caterham 7. And additional support by Design and Display Structures and Darren Burke, Performance Driver Coach. Well, good evening again, everybody. Welcome to this second of 6 race evenings for the caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series, where we see plenty of the best circuits around Europe housing some of our finest drivers that have been competing over the last couple of seasons in the caterhamracer.com championships and series across this year, throughout lockdown and also alongside the 2020 Caterham Motorsport season. We've moved on from the British leg of the season, and we now move up to Belgium, to Zolder, and to the former Formula One venue. It's also known in the location of Zolder, which is located in the Limburg province of the Flemish region of Belgium, and it is a circuit, as we said, that has hosted the Belgian Grand Prix a couple of times. It's also hosted IndyCar and various other championships, but tonight it is Caterham's. And Caterham's have been here once before in real life in 2016 when they took a trip alongside one of their regular visits to other European circuits like Zandvoort and Spa, and it was quite a memorable weekend for many reasons. Scott Woodwiss in the commentary box, and one man who was there at that weekend, at least I think he was my co-comms, a very capable host of the entire caterhamracer.com series, Chris Hutchinson. So, Chris, if I'm correct, you've driven this circuit in real life, and it's a circuit where in a nice way, it's not the same as Spa, but it has its own quality and its own uniqueness that makes it just as much of a challenge in some aspects as you could class Spa in the same grade.
Yeah, so good evening, everybody. I've actually been there twice. We went with Road Sports and then again with Track Sports, I believe. So, yep, driven it for real. It's a track of two halves. It's got two personalities. You've got the first sort of opening section of the lap, which are really, really fast, open, wide corners, really sort of tempt you in and make you have to get the apexes perfect. The track's so wide at those points. And then we get into the sort of more technical side of the track, which has got these sort of chicanes and sort of rolling hills, and then into the final sort of hairpin and chicane. The final chicane is the tightest one of the lot. So it's a real track of two halves. So you'll see some drivers are much better at the early part, and then other drivers are quicker at the last part. But it's a great track to drive in real life, and so it's got little bits of gradient here and there, and say it's got a lot of history behind it. So it was really nice to go and get there, and race there, and all right results as well. So I'll take that.
Ever the self-promotion is Chris, and that's the perk when he's had an event or two, which is never a bad thing at all. So looking at the schedule, just to remind you, we've had our first meeting at Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit last time out, and we go onto continental Europe now, virtually of course, because we go to Zolder here for tonight. After that we head off to Portugal and to Estoril, then we go to Zandvoort on the new Grand Prix circuit, which the drivers got to sample in the first season of caterhamracer.com racing, which is obviously quite interesting, including the new banked sections. Of course, it's now FIA grade 1, what would have been the first Dutch Grand Prix since 1985. Of course, but that had to be postponed because of what. Then we go to Spain and to Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya for the last chance to race the last the chance to get into the grand final, which is taking place on the Grand Prix circuit at the Nürburgring. And these are all circuits in real life that have hosted some kind of Caterham racing, not least for Caterham Motorsport, not for other Caterham championships. I know there has been in the past, a few years ago, a regular get-together of Caterhams that have been going over there to do one big race at Estoril. There's one video that sticks in my mind, which is John Barnes, where he was in one of the fastest Caterhams out there, and he charged his way from the back of the field through to the front in about, must have been 10-12 laps. It was an incredible drive, so Estoril will certainly one to look out for. Let's also remind you of the format as well, because this is not a traditional championship. It is something a little bit different. If you're familiar with things like, let's say, the Formula Ford Festival, it's a little bit of a similar format. So this is one of 4 qualification races. What do we mean by that? Well, there's no points on offer here, but effectively, what is up for grabs are, in this race, 3 spots into them, if there's one or two, depending on where they are in the order. Let's say if they finish second and third, then the drivers in fourth and fifth positions, let's say they finish first and second, first of all, the drivers in third, fourth and fifth would all gain those 3 promotion spots, because Steve McMaster and Will Rossetti have already gone through, so effectively they can finish first and second, but they don't need to earn any more qualification spots because they already have one. So this means now, Chris, it means that there might be some drivers who might play it safe and go for third, fourth and fifth. Others might, if they feel they're quick enough, choose to go for victory. But there has to be that strategy element where you've got to really think on the go. Do you risk it a little bit and push a little bit harder and go for the victory? Or do you realise the fact that, or keep in mind that, if you're behind Steve McMaster or Rossetti, you think, I don't have to, I'm in a position where I can get a top 3 spot, just keep it clean, just follow him around, just get to the checkered flag, and I can put my place into the grand final. It's a bit of a mental game that you have to play with yourself, but one that you have to try and sort out as the race goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same as any sort of time in the championship, where if you're competing against someone who doesn't have as much to lose, let them go. It doesn't actually affect your race too much. But then the racer's brain kicks in, and we, and everyone wants to go and finish in front of the person that's just in front of them. So yeah, we will see a bit of those tactics as well if they're aware and actually have kept up to date with the results themselves, which I'm sure they have. One interesting thing I think it's worth pointing out is that we are currently just over 5 minutes to go, and you can see that only 10 people have set lap times that have been actually counted, and I mentioned earlier we've got some really strict cut warnings on some of these chicanes, so they are penalised in the qualifying if they actually go over those cuts. So only 10 people so far have set a time, and they've only got 5 minutes left to actually go and set a qualifying time. So anyway, got a couple more now coming in, but it's worth keeping an eye on that and see whether anyone does muck up all of their qualifying laps before we get to the race.
And it is a little bit more lenient in the race, you were saying before, just we came on air, Chris. So, but even so, it will still penalise drivers who take too many liberties with the track limits, and particularly through those 2 chicanes. And they are 2 chicanes that pretty much have different characteristics. The first one is it is tight enough, but it still fairly quick. You can carry quite a lot of speed into it. The second sort of winding chicane S section, a little bit twistier, a little bit slower, and it means that overtaking is possible there, but you've got a better chance of passing into that second chicane in theory than you have the first one, because the first one kind of is a bit more compact, a bit tighter as you get towards the apex. You kind of have to have your move made before you start to get under brakes and start to turn in for the chicane to take your line. For the second one, you can kind of make a bit of a last minute dive and hang the other guy out to dry as you try and take the ideal line through on the exit. So I guess really, if you're setting a driver up, you've got to pretty much, depending on how quick you feel your car is and also where you think you might be weakest, if you're going to pass into one of the chicanes, it really depends on how close you are and how good of a chance you've got to either get yourself pretty much there and make the move before you get to the first chicane, for example, or if you can make a bit of a dive into the second chicane realistically and possibly try and get away with it as you try and sort it out in the middle of the complex. It's a bit of a tricky dilemma again for drivers who are going to make passes, and it might make one or two incredibly hairy moments, as we normally do get in caterhamracer.com races, particularly at this chicane and the next one coming up here. Yeah,
you'll see tonight that actually it's not necessarily the chicane itself which is important. It's your exit out the preceding corner, and that's going to determine when people get that opportunity to overtake into the chicanes. Now, it is possible to overtake into each of the 3 chicanes, and indeed the hairpin offers another good opportunity for overtaking, but that will only happen if you absolutely get the preceding corner right, and equally if you're the car in front, then if you make a mistake, then you do leave yourself open for attack. On the as we were just warming up towards this event, I watched some sort of their practice racing, as we see Andrew Parker getting the tail well hung out there. But yeah, the preceding races we've seen already this evening, sort of off stream, they've had some excellent battles. So I'm really hopeful that we're going to see something special tonight.
I would think so, considering if you look at the times now with 2.5 minutes to go, with lap times now finally starting to come in as drivers are respecting track limits. I'm not sure Christian Zaruta was there. He's going a little too wide on the exit. These looking incredibly close in qualifying, very Caterham-esque as I would expect in a real-life Caterham qualifying session, particularly when we've got the top 12 covered by just a fraction over a second, so looking pretty quick. I've just seen Paul Fernerhoff pop up to 5th quickest, and even the top 5 are covered by just under a quarter of a second, so incredibly close. It looks like it's going to be a very intense battle at the front. We should give a shout out to this man. This is Jensen Hassler. Now, he is a new driver for tonight who's in the A grid. I love the fact his driver profile on the caterhamracer.com website very, very simply says, just an old man looking for some decent racing. But and he looks as though, old man or not, he's certainly got some pace about him with sixth, and he was at one point in practice about third fastest. So a welcome addition to the grid. I'm not sure if he sounds possibly European, if you don't mind me presuming. I'm guessing he's either possibly Dutch or Belgian or
very much,
further afield.
Very much British. So another British driver.
Forgive me.
But he is used to driving in the European sort of championships that exist. So he is an online sim racer. He's raced people like Cherney before and seen them sort of racing. So he was keen to get involved and put himself up. And he in early season he's had some sort of offline racing, if you like, again not on broadcast, and he's been doing very well. So one to watch out for certainly. Worth calling out at the moment, Richard Gallagher out in pole position. What a brilliant result there, just off the 54s. Anything dipping into the 54s is a spectacular lap. So really good stuff. But really good to see Richard Gallagher, and I'm sure he'll be counting that 1 minute down to see. There's lots of people just starting their last lap, but I'm sure he will be keen to see that stay as it is now. Let's put him on the stream for posterity there. Oh.
Of course, he's been in a bit of a pole position battle with Christian Zeruta, who was for a small period there for a few minutes with the fastest time. But Richard is a driver who seems to be benefiting from the fact that, all right, David Rowe, maybe Jaroslav Cherney aren't here, but Richard's made some genuine progress in the last few times we've seen him. And so to be up there, currently fastest time, he's actually bought this final lap because he feels he's done, well, we say enough, but when you look at how close it is, you never can tell with Caterham racing. It all depends on whether or not Christian Zeruta or Will Rossetti or Steve McMaster, who we're looking at here in fourth, or indeed Paul Fernhoff can get any closer, of course. Because remember, the top five is only covered by just under a quarter of a second. So the time is just ticking down to its final 10 seconds before we have the checkered flag. And I think drivers will be allowed to complete their laps before it switches across. There is Christian. Now, he is at the moment only just over half a tenth away. Unfortunately, we can't see sector time, so we can't see if he's going any quicker on this final lap. I guess he might have had a little bit of traffic to deal with. Just coming down to the final few corners on this circuit. It's down to the Boulderberg box. And then up towards this little left-right, there's very fast left-right, the Jochen Rindt S, if you like. And then towards the Jackie X corners, the left and right chicane slightly tighter on the run back down towards the pit straight. There's Richard, that's in the background, that is Andy Parker that's pulling to one side. And behind there, I thought was Blair McConaughey. Yes, it is Blair McConaughey because he's back there in 8th position. But now, let's see Christian Zeruta in car number 2 can move that car into position number 1 as he comes up towards the timing line to complete his final lap. He's got 1:55.052 to beat, and he has beaten it with a 1:54.797. And Chris said anything sub 55 is a spectacular lap, and that is exactly what Christian Zeruta has delivered. And also Jensen Hassler, he's popped up on his final effort, and he is only a quarter of a second off. So he's only just faster than Richard Gallagher, but my goodness, you can tell that Christian Zeruta is a former championship contender and race winner in the Caterhams. 1:54.797. I think you said it best, Chris. That lap, quite simply, spectacular.
Yeah, brilliant lap time. That a really good time indeed. Heartbreak for Richard Gallagher just watching those two spots drift away from him right at the end there, but still a great result to be third on this grid.
So there is the grid as we head towards the race. Only one race course per evening in this Winter Euro Series. It's a longer race, 25 minutes. It's more akin to what the likes of, let's say, 270Rs or 310Rs or the 7 UK Championship would run in real life. Slightly longer race for them. But the grid is set to be as follows. Christian Zeruta with an excellent final lap puts himself on pole position by almost a quarter of a second from Jensen Hassler in his first evening racing with caterhamracer.com. So not bad for an old boy, well, a self-proclaimed old boy. But Richard Gallagher currently third. He was on pole for quite a while, but had it snatched away, and he's bumped down to the second row alongside Will Rossetti. Steve McMaster, who is a fellow Grand Final qualifier alongside Will, starts in 5th, alongside Paul Fernhoff in 6th position on the grid. Martin Buchan, an excellent effort to put himself 7th, with Blair McConaughey and Chris Skillicorn and Guy Crawford rounding out the top 10. And the rest of the grid is a welcome first appearance in the Euro Series for Emil Jaselink, racing on one of his home circuits. This is his home venue, being Belgian. But it's Steve Arnell, Andy Parker and Tom McEwen come next. Then it's Mike Hilton, Paul Hawker and Philip Clark. And I'm guessing we were supposed to have Tom Willis, but he is not here. So either he hasn't set a time, will start for the back of the grid, or is not present, which means we will have 17 cars take to the start of this race. So, Chris, as you say, you've raced here and driven here twice. Racing in Caterham's at Zolder, what are some of the key points that some of these drivers might have to keep in mind? There are one or two on this grid that have done that in real life. The Christian Zerutta is definitely one of them, if I'm correct. So how much of an advantage is that going to be for him, knowing how to race occasion in real life compared to on the sim? Obviously, because the competition is just as intense. But are there things that he will know, not just from racing at Zolder, but racing in general, that he'll be able to take into this race that might give him an advantage over others? Or do you think that Zolder might be, because everyone's on the sim and exactly the same cars, a bit more of a level playing field, do you think?
Well, I think the quality of this field, I think they're all now sort of used to racing and adapting, but nevertheless, it does give you that slight advantage to have been there for real in real life. Just that sense of place and knowing where the racing opportunities are going to be, straight off the bat. So I think that it's definitely an advantage. I mean, sticking it on pole and having the advantage he's got is great. However, I've seen Jensen say racing around here all week, and he's been putting in some great laps. So as the red lights come up already.
So the second race and 3 more qualifying spots to pick for the grand final, but the question's got to be who will take them. We'll find out in 25 minutes time as the red lights come up for the second Winter Euro Series race for the caterhamracer.com at Zolder. There's a jump start in the background from somebody, but they get away pretty cleanly. And the sprint down towards the first corner at Erst is going to continue. It's side by side between Hassel on the left-hand side and poleman Christian Zerutta into the first corner. They go 2 by 2. Gallagher's going side by side with Rossetti as they exit through the first corner. Steve McMaster slotted into 5th position. Christian Zerutta has the lead. Hassel's going for it on the inside of the second corner. The Sterenvac box. He's going to try and go through if he can, but he can't put himself alongside quick enough, and he has to slot in. But the top 2 are already starting to try and break away in these first few corners. So towards the Lucian Bianchi corner, that's at turn 3, it's turn 4. Now onto the back straight towards the first 2 chicanes, and Zerutta's wide on the exit, and that will compromise his run towards the first chicane, the Kleiner chicane, as they'll pull side by side. The question's now going to be, Zerutta's off, he's off racing line, but he was having track position if he was going to go side by side. Everyone now being a little bit more cautious, I think, through this first chicane. They're all starting to filter through. It's a brilliant sight watching them all funnel through one after the other. I think the car that had the jump start was Mike Hilton in the background, because he just jumped away, so that'll be a penalty for him, I'm sure. But now into the second of chicanes. This is the Villeneuve chicane, named after the late great Gilles Villeneuve, who sadly lost his life here in 1982 in free practice in Formula 1. And now up towards the right-hander on the exit of Terlamen box. It used to be called the Circuit Terlamen before it was called Circuit Zolder in the days before. And now down towards the Boulderberg corner, while they head back towards the pits at the end of the first lap. So coming towards it, I say at the moment, tentatively, he whispers, everything's been okay so far, apart from 1 or 2 cars going wide. But a good start from Hassel to keep with the Zerutta, and everyone else is starting to get into a rhythm. But so far it looks as though no one's making too many dramatic moves yet, because they realise it's a tight circuit. It's easy to get cut penalties. It's easy to make errors over these big, large sort of curbs that can catch you out. And as you see a bit of a slide there for Steve McMaster, it looks like it's going to be quite a sprint down towards the first corner at the start of lap 2, Chris, as we go for 4th position.
Yeah, we just saw Mike Hilton pulling into the pits to do as Will Rossetti having a dive down the inside. We'll have a look in a minute to see whether he made it through, but that was for a position for 2nd place. He hasn't made it stick. Yep, they got through the first lap. Worth reminding everyone that we have got damage on this season, so we've got a 70% damage rate, which means they are all being extra cautious because they don't want to ruin their race. We saw a first lap incident and last time out of Brands Hatch, and it looks like they've all learnt their lesson and actually decided that it's better to have a complete car going into lap 2.
I'm glad you reminded me of that, because I forgot they had damage on, so they are taking it a bit more tentatively, particularly when they did have 1 or 2 shenanigans at the start of the race at Brands Hatch, which caused grief to 1 or 2 drivers. Mike Hilton, to confirm, was the man that jumped the start. He's come in to serve his penalty already, but going up the inside for 5th position, it looks like that is Blair McConaughey, which it is. In fact, it might even be 4th, actually. No, it is 5th position. So as they come down towards the second of the chicanes now for the second time, and Gallagher then is just going to try and filter behind Martin Buke. He's had a cracking start. He was somewhere around towards the bottom of the top 10, but he's wiggled his way through in the Cheesemobile, so I'm sure will please Chris no end, up to 5th position, and possibly going to get on the tail. And as it stands at the moment, Chris, if he stays where he is, it'll be Zerutta Hassler, and he will get himself into a qualifying spot, but we've still got a long way to go. But a cracking start from Martin, who's another driver who's made incredible progress over the course of a week or so. Yeah,
so reminder that the races are longer. This race is longer, 25 minutes. Long time for drivers to maintain and keep the concentration. And they found towards the end of the last time out that they were getting tired. So again, I expected them to have learnt their lesson and try that. As we see Chris Skillicon looking down locked up his wheels there, looking down the inside of Blair McConaughey, but McConaughey holds on. Will he get the good run out? Remember, it's the exit of this corner that counts more than the entrance into it. So McConaughey will be on the back. Just see, it's tight, 3 wide going into turn 1. Surely that can't work.
Well, it's happening at the moment, and the person you might benefit from is going to be Blair McConaughey. Is get a corner again, locks his inside front and runs wide, just keeps it off the gravel. I think there might have been a little bit of bang of wheels there with Paul Fernerhuff as they come towards turn 2 at the start of lap 3. McConaughey's got his nose in front, and Edward Jaselik is also making cracking progress. He started back in 11th. He's up to 8th position now on the tail of Blair McConaughey, who has been the runner-up in the Academy and the Road Sport the past 2 years, both of Tom Willis, who sadly hasn't taken the start. So he's sort of racing out there for himself, and he's getting elbowed wide a little bit by Jaselik, who held the inside line through the Lucien Bianchi corner, down these first of these back straights towards the Client chicane. This very tricky section that is faster on the exit than it is on the entry. The exit is all important here to get the good run up the hill and over towards the second chicane, as McConaughey uses all the sausage curb on the inside line to hop across, as several drivers are in the background. Tom McEwen was one of them, along with Philip Clark and Paul Hawker. Now they come towards the Villeneuve chicane, and now McConaughey's under attack again, this time from Paul Fernerhuff, who tries to force the issue into the first part of the Villeneuve chicane, and he doesn't get through just yet. We're on board with Paul now, the kind of pop art style, Andy Warhol style machine, as he comes up towards the right-hander at Talaman box. So the order towards the end of lap 3 is Christian Zeruta with almost a second lead, but Hassler's kept that gap pretty stable at the moment, of about 0.8 of a second. Rossetti holds 3rd and Steve McMaster 4th. Now we see Fernerhuff making the move at the Boulderberg corner with Blair McConaughey, and look at the momentum, because Blair McConaughey really has got himself out of the pack here, Chris, because he loses one position, he's lost his momentum, he's lost his rhythm, and now that only he's losing one place, he's at danger of losing 2, 3 or 4 within the next few corners. Yeah,
he's been side by side with Paul Fernerhuff there for 2 corners, which obviously cost you momentum and allow Chris Skillicon to catch back up again. So we're seeing some fantastic little pack battles here, and it is constant battle between trying to progress forward but equally trying to look in your mirrors and defend, and always every time you go side by side through a corner, you know that you're going to be under pressure coming into the next bend.
He's currently having to resist that pressure. He might run a little wide on the exit, which Paul Fernerhuff will take full advantage of as they come towards turn 2. Now, is he going to have enough grip around the outside to hold on? The answer is no. Blair McConaughey, he's having to take these defensive lines, and all he's doing by battling and taking the non-racing, coming off the racing line to defend, is only holding himself up and bringing others into play here, as Chris Skillicon fancies to go up the inside for, that would have been for 9th position on Paul Fernerhuff. Also in there too is Guy Crawford. This great aerial shot also shows Steve Arnell at the back of this quintet. He darts out to try and maybe get a little bit of clear air and a possible better line into the first 2 chicanes, as Fernerhuff, he briefly looked down the outside of McConaughey, but still Blair is holding firm, and that was a bit of a cheeky cut across there. Someone's had a spin in the background. That was Andy Parker, sadly, in the silver and purple machine. He's spun his way out down from 13th position, so he's now lost a couple of spots to Paul Hawker and Tom McEwen. This is where the action appears to be at the moment. It's all very, very tense as Blair McConaughey's got all crossed up at the chicane, and through goes Paul Fernerhuff. Is it going to be now chance for Guy Crawford, who has got past Chris Skillicon through all of that? So 2 position changes. Fernerhuff gets past his McConaughey, and also see Steve Arnell elbowing Chris Skillicon out of the way. That wasn't very smart, was it?
That looked pretty robust, I think, is the wording that we would use in that situation. Not sure how, from the inside, it was hard to see what was going on there. That's a lock up there. I think that was I'm not even sure who that was.
Tom McEwen, I think.
Oh, and we've had a collection, so that's Guy.
That goes Guy Crawford. He's been tagged around by, I think that's Steve Arnell. So Steve has been involved in quite a few antics on this lap already, and he's sort of backing up possibly a bit of a slowdown penalty for that reason, I think. Either that, or he's possibly copped some damage as a result of that.
Yeah, we've asked drivers, if they do make contact and cause someone to spin, then please rejoin behind them so they don't gain that advantage during the race itself. So it's another disincentive to actually make contact with drivers in front. So we can see the battle out front here is still not settled, is it? I mean, it looks like the gaps are fairly high, but nevertheless, if any mistake happens, then people are there ready to sort of chop in the heels there, right away.
So just going through the order, of course, Christian Zeruta and Jensen Hassler are in 1st and 2nd place, and although Will Rossetti and Steve McMaster are 3rd and 4th, I don't mean this impolitely, it doesn't really matter that they're in 3rd or 4th position, because Will Rossetti doesn't earn another spot. He's already secured his place in the grand final. Remember, there's 4 qualifying races. The top 3 drivers, or at least the top 3 drivers that haven't already qualified, shall we say, are the result of anyone else that's still racing in the series. they get an automatic qualifying spot into the grand final. There is also the last chance saloon race that's happening at Barcelona. So at this rate, because Will Rossetti and Steve McMaster both finished on the podium in Brands Hatch and therefore have already qualified for the grand final, the final promotion spot would go to this man, Richard Gallagher, who was on pole in qualifying for a portion of it before he was shuffled down for third by the two men that currently are out in front. You're absolutely right with the top three. That has closed in a little bit more, particularly second to third, because Will Rossetti's been using that clear track to his advantage. And that gap, I have to say, has stayed incredibly static between Christian Zeruta and Jensen Hassler. So it looks as though that Zeruta has managed to pull up that small gap early doors in the first lap and a half or so. But then since then, Hassler has been able to pretty much match Christian Zeruta in terms of pace, but doesn't appear to have those extra tenth or so per lap to be able to pull him in. He might get it possibly towards the second half of the race when his rhythm comes in, or Christian starts to maybe tire a bit more. I mean, actually on that lap, in fact, as I say that, he's actually gained a tenth and a half on that lap, and Rossetti's also on pace as well, but he was about 2/10 slower. So Hassler now, we know now he's as quick as Zeruta on track, but in order to get himself closer, he has to keep finding an extra tenth or two as the race goes on to get that little bit closer, because as we spoke before, the magic region to get himself into the toe in these cars in Assetto Corsa is within half a second. So he's currently 9/10 of a second away. He needs to find and chip away by about a tenth, at least a tenth or so per lap, to get himself close enough to possibly make a challenge into one of the chicanes or one of the corners at the end of the lap to give himself any chance of potential victory, and a victory on his debut, no less. That would be incredibly impressive.
Yeah, let's definitely keep an eye on that gap. Like you say, half a second, and then he's definitely in with the slipstream. We're into the middle phase of this race, so we've got the longer race format. We've still got 14 minutes to go, so that's the length of the races from last season still to go. So there's a long time still for lots to happen, and so mistakes, but equally he could just be relaxing there, waiting for the end of the race to then make his move at that point.
I don't believe there's tyre wear, so it would just be a case of not overheating his tyres too much to be able to, keep them within the optimal operating range to make them work better. As Guy Crawford was a little bit clumsy there through the chicanes, so was Tom McEwing. He was all crossed up on the exit, but he managed to gather it up smartly, and he's continuing on in 15th position. Philip Clark is in the pit lane, I'm guessing possibly for some kind of a penalty or an issue with his car with damage. So he's dropped down the order as you see Guy Crawford rocking over the curves at the Villeneuve chicane. And there is Steve McMaster in fourth place. Again, he and Will Rossetti have already qualified, so third and fourth will simply just be for personal pride. And here is what could potentially become a battle for the final automatic qualifying spot between these three, between Richard Gallagher, Martin Buchan, and Emil Jasenic of Belgium. How fitting would it be for Emil to pick up a qualifying spot at his home circuit? You would dearly love that, but he has to first of all catch and then pass Martin Buchan, and then catch and pass Richard Gallagher. Now, interestingly, new fastest lap of the race from Will Rossetti, and he's now brought the gap down to almost half a second between himself and Jensen Hassler. So this will be intriguing. If you can get yourself close enough, again, this is that key half a second range we were talking about. So we ride on board with Will Rossetti in third place. And there are the two cars to watch out for. The white car just in the lead, them a distance with the black wings. That is Christian Zeruta. And just in front, in pretty much the all-white car, is Jensen Hassler. And now he's going to try and just close in if he can down the straight. His exit has been decent enough to get himself a little bit closer, but let's see if he can get a good run through this first chicane to close in a little more. And at the moment it seems as though, Chris, that Rossetti is closer to Hassler than Hassler is to Zeruta. So if Hassler doesn't get a move on here in these next few minutes, he might find himself dropping down from second to third. Not that it's going to matter in terms of his qualifying place, but for pride as a sim racer and as a virtual racing driver, you certainly want to try and stay there and keep him as best he can. Trouble is though, if he holds him up too much and tries to defend too much, all he'll do is compromise himself and lose time to Christian in front. So tricky situation.
Yeah, and you can see that his eyeball time is going more to his rear view mirror, which we're seeing make some more mistakes, which he wasn't doing before. When he had that second gap, he was, comfortable in the middle there. But you can see as soon as you start looking in your mirror, because you can see people, I saw Christian out front making a mistake there as well. So everything does look like it's closing up a little bit at the front of this field. But yeah, Will Rossetti certainly looks the more threatening at the moment, and he'll be, turning on the Jaws music and making sure he makes life as uncomfortable as he can for Hassler just sat in front of him.
Well, speaking of Jaws, he certainly smells blood in the water. Let's put it that way. As he comes down the pit straight, the lead gap, despite everything that's been going on, even with that small little twitch there for Zeruta, he still leads. And look at how evenly matched it is for lap times. It was both 154.9s, and the difference was a mere a couple of hundredths between both Zaruta and Hassler. Rossetti again was the quicker of the three. He did a 154.8, and he's hitting against Hassler now. He feels the pressure. He's all sideways. He's crossed up over the curbs. And now Rossetti is in a prime position to pounce here. He'll be in the slipstream within that magic half a second range. More than that, he's going to go alongside him towards Lucian Bianchi corner. He knows the time is now, but Hassler holds on around the outside line bravely, but he knows he's compromised now as he goes down towards the chicane. Christian Ruth must be laughing. His mirror's watching this. Down towards Client chicane, looking to the outside. Rossetti will try and break that a little bit later, but Hassan has to defend. They are side by side, and Rossetti looks round the outside into the chicane. Now, whether that will stick or not, that might be a bit tricky. He might get a bit of a cut down or a slow down penalty for that if he's not careful. I think he might have just got away with it, but that was on the limit, wasn't it, in terms of how much he could cut there. But as they go side by side again down towards Villeneuve chicane, it's a clearer move into the first part of the chicane. As we go back into view, he's into second place, or is he? Runs wide on the second part of the corner and has to relinquish it back again. So it was an ambitious attempt, which I commended on the first part, but didn't quite work on the second part, as he was just too keen to get through. As a result of that, look who's now charging up behind him, his fellow grand final qualifier from Brands Hatch, Steve McMaster. But all this is doing now is allowing Hassler to get away. But as I mentioned, all this battling has only just let Zaruta get away. He's now 3.6 seconds up the road. Unless he makes a mistake, touchwood, Chris, I can't really see him being caught anymore, can you?
Yeah, it'd have to be a fairly large mistake at this point. Still got 10 minutes to go, though, so there's still plenty of opportunity for horrible things to happen. But yes, overall, there were lots of mini battles, weren't there, going around all those chicanes and jumping and cutting and all those kind of things. But actually, the war was won in that instance by Hassler. But I'm sure Rossetti has got enough time to regroup, settle in, and then pull back, because he does seem to have just that teeny bit more extra pace than Hassler in front of him. Worth mentioning at this point, Scott, as well, if there's any drivers sort of sat there watching any of our streams, we're live across Facebook, and we're also on YouTube going live as well. Anyone out there watching, thinking about how do you get involved and do these things, well, if you haven't got a simulator at home, then FPZERO Simulators, one of our championship sponsors, have got some absolutely brilliant turnkey solutions for driving at home, and they will allow you to buy a simulator and it'll have everything that you need to just come along and join in. And why not do that? So check their website out. It's Rossetti going out wide again. A number of our drivers already use FPZERO content, and they really are extremely high quality home simulators. So check out their website and see what's available.
Yeah, definitely do. They're one of our three very valuable sponsors. Of course, we've got partnerships with Design and Display Structures and also Darren Burke driver coach as well, so be sure to check them all out, as well as of course just Add Lightness and DPR Motorsport. But definitely, if you want to get started, FPZERO Simulators is a good place to start to pick up your first rig if you fancy it. So time wise, how time flies when you're having fun. Just under 8.5 minutes to go in this second of the qualification races for the caterhamracer.com Euro Winter Series. And we see here Chris Skillicorn is on the back of Paul Hawker here, who's managed to pick himself up into the top 10. And Chris Skillicorn did get caught up a little bit earlier on with some battles for the second half of the top 10. Now they turn their way out of the right-hander of Telammenbocht towards the Boulderberg corner.
He could well be sort of nursing an injured car. It's hard to tell at this point, but this late into the race, and especially as we saw him involved so heavily in that pack racing early doors, you may well be sort of nursing some suspension damage or maybe even some engine damage at this point. But Paul Hawker there looks like he's let Chris Skillicorn go, so he wasn't interested in having that fight, or either that or he maybe had to slow down for a cut penalty. You never know.
What's interesting is I've just seen there Christian Zaruta just put in a 154, I think, 0.3, which is even quicker than he went in qualifying, which is quite astonishing. So he's gone 4/10 quicker than his pole lap, which shows that he really is motoring along, and he's pretty much looking to put this qualifying spot to bed and secure it all for himself. And Jensen Hassler is still in second place, but he's got the gap out now to about 0.7 of a second. And here we see Emil Jasenic, who is staying with Martin Buchan. He's not really closed the gap too much. He's kind of stabilised and kept with him, but the gap stayed pretty static at the front. The car which is going to get that final automatic qualification spot is just there at the front of shot going past the picture now, which is Richard Gallagher in the blue car. And there is Richard as he hops over the Kleiner chicane and up over the crest underneath the Yokohama bridge, and now down towards the complex of the Villeneuve chicane before he winds his way under brakes and turns his way right and then left and then right against quite a tricky section this, but it's always quite fun to get right when you do nail it just right to get the maximum amount of speed. A little wide there from in front for Steve McMaster, making a bit of a mistake. We see there now where Rossetti's on the tail of Jensen Hassler now as they come up into the end of another lap and behind. And we're just saying he's looking for a move now on Martin Buchan for trying to force him into a mistake. Buchan does lock the inside front and gets a little squirrely on the exit. And now as they head towards the Jackie Hicks corner, we go on board with Emil on the run down towards Jackie, down to that left right. She came back onto the pit straight, and Buchan might be a sitting duck here because he might just have to let Emil go. If he tries to brave out around the outside, it might not work. And he feels discretion's a better pass of valor and does indeed allow Emil through. It might set him up for a better exit onto the pit straight, which means he could get his position back if he plays his cards right. And he is moving to the outside to have a go. They are still side by side on the sprint down towards the turn one again with 5.5 minutes to go, which I think is in to 6th position now. But Buchan wants to try and get it back because they know that if anything happens to any of the top 4, particularly any of the drivers which are set for automatic qualification, that will either be Zaruta, Hassler, or even Gallagher. There's a chance they could possibly capitalise, Chris, and take full advantage.
Yeah, you saw him covering off the inside line, and that's absolutely the right move into turn one. You have to cover that inside line. It's very, very difficult to go around the outside, so he did the right thing there. Yeah, Richard Gallagher sort of sat in, well, just as we see him dropping a wheel into the gravel, but sat in quite a comfortable position. But in a way, that's also uncomfortable because the only thing you're fighting is yourself, really. We did see Steve McMaster giving him a sniff that he might be able to chase down that position, but it's not going to gain him anything. So I'm sure that's all playing on his mind. And sometimes the lack of competition can be your biggest enemy in these races.
Being competition, battle for seconds on. I just saw it there on the screen. It's Rossetti and Hassler who are going at it, and Rossetti has got through finally. And Hassler's a little bit all over the place on the exit the Villeneuve chicane, but he has managed to hold on to the car, and he is now down to 3rd position on the road. It's not going to change his qualification spot because he will stay there as the second highest driver that hasn't qualified yet, so he will take that 2nd spot behind Christian Zaruta. Rossetti there, we just saw a quick view of his virtual car driver avatar at the wheel of his Caterham. And Hassler gets back into the tow. A little bit of a wayward run through the Boulderberg corner just there. And here comes Hassler again, just peeks out, puts himself into Rossetti's wing mirrors and has to stand on the anchors not to hit the back of him there. Had to be very careful not to make contact. But he is within striking distance to get back into the slipstream and possibly make a move here. Is Rossetti going to go defensive, or does he feel confident enough on the racing line to hold in his position? He's going to have a look down towards the left-hander and just keeping an eye. Also, Emma Jaselik has not got past Buchan just yet, but they're still going at it. And Emma Jaselik goes for a dive up the inside into turn one. He's going for it again, forces Buchan to make the mistake, but I think he saw it coming. But even if he did, a great move from Jaselik to dive up the inside and hold on to the position. Buchan looks back around the outside to retake the place into the steering back box, but can't quite get through there, through Canal and up towards Lucien Bianchi. Staying in the tow, there's still time for him to get it back. Just over 3 minutes to go in this 2nd Euro Winter Series race for caterhamracer.com. We've had Brands Hatch. Estoril's coming up next in Portugal. That'll be another one, particularly with the long pit straight. It will certainly be one for overtaking. Speaking of which, side by side, and they're all up and over the curbs. Hassler was out of shape as he came out of the chicane, and now look at Steve McMaster, who was just arrived onto the tail of the pair of them. And so I think Jensen Hassler, I think at the moment he's more concerned about trying to beat Will Rossetti on track than keeping his qualifying spot, because and even if he loses the place to Steve McMaster, he's still safe. But they've all got to be careful because Richard Gallagher's not too far away either. He's back in 5th position, but he's not too far away from McMaster. He's only 1.6 seconds off, and Hassler's off the road. That's not going to help him at all. He's going to lose momentum again. I think, forgive me for saying so, I think Jensen's trying to do his best here to throw away his qualifying spot, let alone secure it, Chris.
Well, interestingly, he wasn't here last week. He is new on the system and the servers, so maybe he doesn't know or doesn't appreciate the fact that he doesn't have to beat these 2 people that are around him, hounding him at every corner. He only has to finish where he is to qualify for that grand final. So we would forgive him for not knowing that, and he's just going for it as fast as he can. But you can see that he is making mistakes now as we're coming towards the end of this race. We've only got 2 minutes left, so fatigue and a bit of brain fade is definitely setting in a little bit.
So Zaruta has backed off his pace a bit more. He's into the 155, so he feels comfortable enough. And at a 7-second margin, I guess you could say why not. So he's certainly doing everything he needs to just bring the car home and secure that qualifying spot. And Jensen Hassler still has it, and Richard Gallagher is also in there too. But again, he is currently an automatic qualifier as it finishes. These two, meanwhile, still haven't left each other alone, and this time it's now just heading up the inside of Buchan once again through Sterenvact, and now come up towards Canal, and Buchan trying to force it up the inside line. This is one of the best battles of the race so far between these two. And also watch out behind them, because you see there, that is Paul Fernhoff trying to close in on them. He's only 1.4 seconds away. And I've said this so many times, and I'll say it once again, the harder these two fight each other, the easier it's going to be for the cars behind to take advantage and to try and catch up. And you saw there, Paul Fernhoff, he's gained literally about 2/10 just for that one corner, because these two continuously going back and forth over the curbs. He's closing in hand over fist here. He's right on the back of them now. So I imagine here these two might be so blinded by battling each other, they might both get hoodwinked here, Chris, by a charging Paul Fernhoff, and you might pass them both in one fell swoop.
His problem is going to be, though, that how do you get past two cars that are constantly sliding? Oh. We've seen a mistake there by Giselic, actually. Unfortunately, the tree surgeon hadn't chopped that wet branch, so it covered our view, but it was hidden away there. Paul Fernhoff has made that, and he might have made it through both of them. He has.
So, from what was unfortunately out of our view, something happened between the two of them. I think possibly there was a dive from one on the other, which possibly the car which was being under attack was coming under attack, didn't really anticipate, and so because of that, I wonder why the camera wasn't swinging normally as if they were taking the racing line. I thought there might have been an issue, and there certainly was. So Paul Fernhoff then is up into 6th position.
Normal services resumed behind. It's amazing, isn't it? They love going side by side all the way through.
They're pretty much just accepted, right, Paul, you go through. Right, where were we? So they're going to carry on now towards the flag, although Paul might become a part of this, because Buchan he's just outside the half-second margin. He's got bigger things to worry about, because his sparring partner, Emma Giselic, is in the slipstream. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, this man has continued to dominate the race from start to finish, and Christian Zeruta, who has been a championship contender and a multi-time race winner in Caterhams in real life, he's certainly replicating that form in the sim. And of course, he's in the Brawn GP Special, as I call it. And that car's driven by other people these days. I'm sure Christian, I wonder how he feels about other drivers at the wheel of his car, I'm sure, but he quite misses it. And I'd love to see him back into the racing. Of course, it's I guess he took a bit of a back seat from racing after his one of his closest
he's very much
friends in Andy passed away.
He's very much concentrating on getting married this year, so so that's a big year, and like you say, his father untimely passing as well, so but we would like to see him back in a car, as long as I get a season without him to start with.
you want to get there and pick up some wins first before he comes back. I'm sure that'd be the key thing there. Jensen Hassler, I don't think he's still got the concept yet that you need to stay where you are and you've qualified, but he still wants to try and get as close as he can to get towards second place. So kudos to him. He might even tell us in a bit that he probably was just having some fun out there, but even so, and he's locking up again to almost throw it away once more. But back at the front, up towards the final chicane, will come our race leader. He came under early pressure in the opening couple of laps, but since then, he's managed to pull away, take advantage of everyone else battling behind him. He's had a pretty much trouble-free race, and it will be lights to flag from pole position, and he weaves in delight, and obviously so, he slows right up to the checkered flag. But Christian Zeruta does indeed book his place into the Winter Euro Series Grand Final with victory at Zolder. It's second place for Rossetti, third place for Jensen Hassler. He gets the second qualifying spot. Then it's Steve McMaster, and Richard Gallagher also automatically qualifies for the finale at the Nürburgring in a few weeks' time. Now, for this lot, Paul Fernhoff is just ahead. It's going to be a 3-wide classic Caterham photo finish across the line. And Fernhoff just beats both Buchan and Giselic. I'd love to see the timing on that in a second. We looked at the results. That was incredible stuff, particularly with that race-long battle between Buchan and Giselic. And it was Martin Buchan who won it in the end. Then it's Blair McConaughey who comes across in 9th. Chris Skillicorn comes home 10th. Paul Hawker will take 11th place. Guy Crawford, who had a spin earlier on, or some issue, he had a spin exiting the final couple of corners in the opening few laps, suddenly dropped down to 12th. Tom McEwing's 13th. Steve Arnell also had to slow up after contact before, I'm guessing, with Guy Crawford. And then Mike Hilton was the last driver who had that penalty for jumping the start. And Andy Parker, sadly, did not make the end of the race. And Philip Clark has been in the pits since the opening few laps as well. Well, typical Caterham racing there, Chris, and fantastic wheel-to-wheel action between several drivers, but in the end, Christian Zeruta driving like the Christian Zeruta that we know and enjoy both in real life and also in the sim, it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. He dominated that race, and you never get on the stream when you dominate a race like that, do you? He had some early battles, but that was it really. And we saw some really good early battles between the sort of mid pack there, and that settled itself out after a couple of a bit of contact out that final hairpin. That did seem to spread them out, but then Emil Jaselenk having a brilliant race with Martin Buchan on only his second appearance.
Just noticing in the chat there, Christian's Spirit saying, "I will ban you." Is that just a warning to anyone else who tries to beat him? I'm quite wondering. Either way, it's might have been a warning for people not to try and pass him. Either way, whether it was or not, it seemed to have worked inadvertently, because Christian Zaruta does indeed take victory in that race by almost 5 seconds from Will Rossetti in second place. Justin Hassler picks up third, and Steve McMaster is in fourth place, Richard Gallagher fifth. And to confirm, because Rossetti and McMaster have already automatically qualified as they finished in the top 3 at Brands Hatch, the 3 automatic qualifying spots for the grand final for this race go to Christian Zaruta, Jetson Hassler and Richard Gallagher. Those 3 drivers locked in. They will be at the Nürburgring at the end of December. Then it is Paul Verderhoff in 6th, Martin Buchan with that incredible battle race long with Emil Jaselenk, particularly in the second half of the race when they were back and forth all the way. But it's Buchan who finishes 7th, Jaselenk who finishes 8th, Ben McConaughey who dropped back a couple of spots in the closing stages to 9th, and Chris Skillicorn also climbed up into the top 10 with 10th. Paul Hawker finishes 11th ahead of Guy Crawford, who spun early on, and Tom McEwing 13th from Steve Arnell and Mike Hilton. And then Andrew Parker, of course, who sadly DNF'd, and Philip Clark, who had to pit. And also, as we said, Mike Hilton had that penalty as well for jumping the start. And sadly, even though he was entered, no Tom Willis this evening as well. I think it's about that time again, Chris, for you to don your Martin Brundle hat and grab your microphone and go and have a chat, walk down the pit lane. So, as usual, Chris, off you go. Let's
see who we can find tonight. So let's see whether our race winner is available. So Christian, have you got us in the commentary box?
I may well do.
That was a pretty nice dominant victory tonight. A bit of battling early doors, but then settled into a pretty easy race for you.
It's amazing what you can do when you haven't got DPR team principal David Rowe around punting 5 minutes, isn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, like I say, I guess the biggest pressure was yourself in that race, because you didn't have anyone sort of sat right on your tail. A little bit of pressure there just to keep it all nice and consistent.
Yeah, it was basically 25 minutes of just saying, don't cock it up.
And we saw in the middle of the race, actually, the gap did come right down, but then Rossetti sort of equally caught up with Jensen just behind you, and that then sort of spread it out. But I think they're almost a bit of a dodge bullet there.
Well, yeah, I was just doing the Lewis Hamilton and just, keeping an eye on Verstappen behind me and just managing the pace throughout the race.
That's great stuff.
Getting up when I needed to, not trying too hard.
Well, that's a qualifying position now, so we'll see you at the grand final now.
Cheers, GZ.
Congratulations.
Cheers, mate.
Okay, and I'm just going to see whether Jensen is available for a chat. We'll see whether he is now. Hey, Jensen, have you got us in the commentary box? Not sure Jensen is. No Jensen today, so we'll get him next time. But yeah, a great performance. Let me see who else can we see whether we can grab. I'll tell you what, Richard Gallagher. I'll see whether he's available for a chat. Hey, Richard, have you got us in the commentary box?
Hello, gents.
Hey, so what a race! I thought you were going to get pole position, but that was sadly ripped away from you at the last second on those last few laps.
I was asking some pretty serious questions about everyone else's ability, to be honest, because I've not been anywhere near that far up front. So yeah, I was completely shocked and not too altogether surprised when I lost it.
But nevertheless, still third place on the grid. What a great start! And then and equally, I mean, I guess you're aware that you're in that qualifying spot, and so you just sort of protected it for the rest of the race.
That was the hope, but yeah, I'm still very tentative in the first few laps. I'm still sort of getting a bit of confidence. So, but I seem to find a bit of space, and it all opened out, and I just sort of try to pump in some consistent times after that.
Yeah, well, I certainly did that. So you have booked your spot. So we'll see you in that grand final towards the end of December, hopefully. But yeah, congratulations, and maybe more of the same. See you further up the grid next time out.
Thank you very much.
Well done. There you go, Scott. So 2 happy people qualifying for the grand finals, and we'll try and catch up with Jensen another day.
Yeah, that's never a bad thing, of course. I'm sure you'd be expected to be happy after races like that to get them to get their spots confirmed. So, 3 more drivers confirmed then, as we say, Christian Zaruta, Jensen Hassler, and also Richard Gallagher. 3 drivers who, I think Christian was more expected. Jensen was a pleasant surprise on his first evening, and Richard much improved. Now, of course, they're confirmed. I guess now it's a case of, it's more a case of now confirming drivers who, I don't say this impolitely, drivers who are usually either hovering around the edge of the top 5 or mostly towards the top 10, because depending on who else shows up for the next few races, those are the drivers there that are going to get the opportunity. And if the battles that we saw in between battling amongst the kind of just outside the top 5 and in the midst of the top 10, if they're that intense when they aren't in a qualifying spot, can you imagine what it's going to be like in the next couple of races when they are going to be up for grabs and there's going to be even more on the line for finishing possibly 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th down the line.
Yeah, isn't that great that we can, as these qualifying races go on, the battles through the midfield are going to become even more vital, and they are often the ones that are brilliant to watch on stream. We've seen that the battles out front can be intense, but because they've been in that qualifying spot, they've been able to relax and just sit back and let the gap develop. Whereas the battles in the midfield, they are protecting and having to go forward and backwards and often enjoying the grass and every single last bit of the track, as we saw tonight with Emil and it's just and Martin Buchan. So it's can't wait to start showing those midfield battles, and they will be for the qualifying spots. And isn't that a great thing?
Yeah, can't disagree with that. It should be quite a spectacle. And the spectacle you'll see it next time out is going to be, as we say, travelling across from Belgium, across into the Iberian Peninsula and up across to Estoril, former Portuguese Grand Prix circuit. And it will be certainly a spectacle to watch. And in terms of being able to see it, there's a reminder of the calendar again. Estoril is same time next week on the 8th of December. And then after that, we've got our last qualification race at Circuit Park Zandvoort on the 15th of December. Then just before Christmas, it is the last chance of the race. And then just before New Year, it is the grand final for the Nürburgring. We now know 6 of the drivers that will be performing in that race, but who are going to be the next 3 that will be able to book their places in Portugal at Estoril, all will be revealed. But before we, of course, we sign off for the evening, once again, we'll give thanks to our very gracious and very generous sponsors and supporters. So as we sign off, we say that caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series once again is supported by DPR Motorsport. And I will find a bit I need to say in a second because I didn't have that in front of me here. I should have prepared for that better. Well done, Scott. Give it a finger on the screen. There we go. Right, so I'll try that again. The caterhamracer.com Winter Euro Series is sponsored by, as we see, DPR Motorsport, your competitive advantage, by FPZERO Simulators, providing professional-grade simulators for your home and our drivers, and by Just Add Lightness, high-performance LED lights and accessories for the Caterham 7. And we're also supported by Design and Display Structures and Darren Burke, Performance Driver Coach. Thank you to all of them for supporting the championship, for supporting the series across the winter. Thank you, of course, to Chris and to everyone who's been involved just racing. And thank you to everyone who's been watching, either live or back on the stream. And once again, that brings to a close another evening of excellent caterhamracer.com action. Once again, we'll do it all again next week. As we say, we'll take the trip across to Portugal and Estoril, where 3 more drivers will put themselves into the grand final on the 29th of December at Nürburgring. But until then, join us next time. Stay safe, stay warm, and we'll see you for more action in 7 days' time. Bye for now.
Can't wait.